Hello everyone, good afternoon. I'm Angela. I'm the CEO of Vital Trust, which is a security company in Web3 area. And for this panel, we will talk about compliance and regulation. When we talk about compliance and regulation, it always be a very serious topic. So today we will have our panelists to talk about it. And for this panel, we will have English and Chinese. So if you don't understand, please focus on the translation. Thank you. 刚刚结束的这个钟总的发言，然后也是给我们开了一个非常好的头，所以我们接下来就是先请各位先再介绍一下自己。So before we start, I wanted to let you guys to briefly introduce yourself, maybe from India. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, sure. Nice to be here, everyone. My name is Hong. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Gravity. At Gravity, what we're doing is we're building an institutional-grade hybrid exchange on ZK Sync. And for those who are not familiar with hybrid exchanges, it's actually, we call it a self-custodial central exchange, where we segregate settlement to trade matching, where settlement happens on-chain to alleviate counterparty risk, where we don't hold the customer funds. But trade matching happens off-chain to ensure that we have a very efficient trading infrastructure and trading experience to compete with central exchanges. So yeah, I mean, this is, we have been building in stealth mode, and we'll be launching the product in November. So it's our first public appearance. So really nice to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. 钟总。
大家好，我是Exchange周根发。Exchange主要是提供了这个一站式的技术解决方案，包括交易所MPC托管NFT 的这样的一些解决方案，希望和大家多多交流。
谢谢。然后是我们 Sorry, 是 Henry。So sorry.
大家好，我是 DGFT 的 Henry，是 DGFT founder CEO。DGFT 呢是一个去中心化的交易所，专注于做的是 security token， 就是资产的证券化。然后呢，比较特别的是，我们是在新加坡的监管沙盒里面，所以可以说是我们到目前为止，我们是第一家，也是唯一的一家受监管的可以做证券化 token 的去中心化交易所。
非常感谢。Jeff, yes, Jeff from HashKey. Thank you.
大家好，我是张大勇，来自HashKey 集团。那HashKey 集团呢，我们最近可能被大家所熟知，我们刚刚这个发布了香港的持牌合规的交易所。这个交易所呢，既对这个专业投资者对机构，也对这个我们的这个散户这个retail consumer开展了业务。那同时呢，其实HashKey Group呢，我们也有我们其实是一家这个面向整个Web3 赛道的一个基础设施的一个这样的一个提供商。包括我们有一个亚洲领先的这样的一个 fund， 然后呢，我们也有亚洲领先的这个我们 station 的节点，然后呢包括我们的 NFT 啊，我们的 DNA 啊等等啊，我们有非常丰富的这个业务线。谢谢大家。
非常感谢。The last one will be Edward, the KX founder. Could you please introduce yourself?
你好，我是 Edward. Hello. So I'm the founder of ZKX. We're building derivatives on ZK rollups, and we basically work around the idea of scaling arbitrary computation like order books in a decentralized way. So we have designed custom consensus algorithms and different tooling for developers to scale these arbitrary computation use cases. And yeah, ZKX is building on StarkNet and upcoming ZK rollups, and happy to be here. 谢谢。
包括 Chinese. So, 那既然说到谢谢这个词，那我们第一个问题就先由中文的问题开始好了。就我们知道这个加密货币它其实是无国界的，然后但是它其实监管和合规是在每个地方都非常不一样的，然后具有各种各样的特殊性。我想问的第一个问题是，加密行业如何去应对跨境合规带来的挑战 它的监管到底应该是本地化的，还是全球化的，还是说全球本土化的？先从那个钟总开始吧，谢谢。
对，加密货币本身它的特性是去中心化，所以它必然会面临很多这样的监管的这个问题，因为我们知道就是不同的国家现在其实它有不同的监管政策，那怎么去实现跨境的一些这种监管的框架，其实是需要有这样的一个标准框架的，因为如果每个地方的这个监管的规则，每个地区或者每个国家的监管规则不一样，其实对行业的发展本身是有很大的阻碍的。当然，毕竟现在也有一些这个监管的一些或者讲标准啊，或者是一些联盟也好，就是像 Travel Law 这样的这种一些规则，我觉得是一些好的现象。那也就是说，在未来在跨境的这样的这种资产转移的时候，我们必须得知道对方是谁，而且我们要求一些这个交易所或者是一些托管方必须得去应用这个 Travel Law 的规则。所以这是我们可以看到的一个这个关于跨境监管的一个好的趋势。当然，更多的这样的一些标准或者规则，需要更多的这些国家去一起去建立的。这是刚刚是对这个未来监管的一个期待。另外一个呢，我觉得就是跨境的这种监管，它面临的一些另外的问题是，比如说我们要引入更多的一些这种新的技术去实现，比如说 AI。当我们去识别一个用户 KYC 信息的时候，我们都知道。不同的国家的这个数据是不一样的，就是比如说在发达国家，它的公民数据很齐全，但是在一些第三世界或者是经济不是那么发展的不是那么好的国家，它的居民数据库其实不全的，甚至是没有居民数据库的。据我了解，有些东南亚的国家，它可能是没有身份数据，就是说有可能都没有身份，就是他这个他的公民没有身份的信息在这个数据库里面。那这种情况之下，他就很难去做 KYC， 也很难去做反洗钱。那我们就需要借助于 AI 的一些技术，比如说，我们去怎么样去识别这个怎么样去把这些人的信息，他有社交信息，或者他有其他方面的信息，能够聚合起来之后，有形成唯一的一个身份。然后我们通过 AI 的一些数据或者模型去识别他的一些行为。我们之前也有过这样的一些这种探索。就是用新的技术去解决一些这种 AI 和反洗钱，包括反洗钱也是一样的。因为最近在新加坡也出了一个很大的这个反洗钱的这个案子。那其实链上的反洗钱也是一个很重要的一个部分，怎么样去做反洗钱？那我们传统的可能是用推荐数据库，对吧？我们推荐数据库它是有层级限制的，就是你到底能回溯多少层的这样的这个转账的链路。那当时我们用 AI 大模型，我们是能够去对它的整个的这个层数是没有限制的。我们可以去用 AI 大模型的方式去做，而且它的效率更快，成本也会更低。这也是我们现在探索的。我们新加坡在今年推出了一个KYT 的产品，叫 Trust Follow， 是专门去做反洗钱这样的。我们现在也在跟监管去合作，包括像新加坡的NTO 的实验室，还有 CSA 新加坡安全局也在去合作探讨怎么样去能够去在区块链上面的反洗钱，怎么样能够更高效。而且速度更快，能够更精准的去识别出这些有危险的交易。
非常感谢钟总，我感觉钟总都已经猜到了我后面还要问这个 AML and KYC 的这个问题，直接一起都回答了，特别感谢。那对于国际监管是应该本地化、全球化还是全球本地化这个问题，这个 DGFT 的张总您怎么看呢？谢谢。
这个刚才那个钟总讲的很多观点非常同意。一个层面是看身份识别 AML 这一块儿，另外一个角度看那个监管呢，就所谓的就是发行和销售和交易怎么去监管。这个问题其实在现在的金融环境里面，这个问题已经是存在的，所以这个命题不是个新命题。这个命题呢，也跟现在的金融的所谓的中心市场之间，它本身就存在一个矛盾。我们讲全球金融中心嘛，那个现在的话是比如说美国啊、日本啊、新加坡啊、香港啊、伦敦啊之类的。大家想一想，现在最大的交易所，股票交易所，比如纳斯达克，纳斯达克上面它本身就是要之所以成为全球的交易平台，它上面交易的证券品种啊，就不仅是美国的证券，阿里巴巴也在上， 还有很多的其他公司，英国石油也在上面等等。但同时，它的客户就是投资人，也肯定不是只是美国人。所以，越是想成为全球金融中心的地方或者全球金融中心的平台，它一定是全球资产、全球的资金投资人。所以这个命题不是因为有了 crypto 或者加密资产这个问题才会存在的。所以这种矛盾一直是有。那么也因为这种矛盾一直是有的，所以呢，解决现在我们加密资产的更加的全球化，因为加密资产的技术本身是更加有利于全球化的。因为钱包的话本身就不一定有国界的限制等等，它的转移又是全球性的，所以只是让这个问题呢变得更加突出一点，是这么看这个问题。那么如果去解决的话呢，当然我不觉得我们这个 panel 能把这些问题全部解决掉的，因为这是个矛盾。但是从解决的方案的探索角度来讲，也可以看一看现在的那个纳斯达克是怎么解决全球吸引人家来上市和全球销售它的股票的一些做法。这些做法其实在那个加密资产的里面也是可以运用到的。那么就比如说你在一个美国上市的股票可以买的人全世界，你怎么到全世界去推销这个股票？肯定是受监管，这是个前提。特别是加密资产越来越主流化以后，那就本身就是加密资产就会成为主流金融的一部分，甚至以后会成为主流金融的大部分。那么它受监管会被纳入这个体系，应该这是个不可避免的事儿。那么怎么去做的话呢？一个就是现有的有些做法，该拿的有些牌照必须可能还要去拿，但是不一定都要拿个交易所，就像纳斯达克，它没有拿全世界的交易所牌照。但是他可能分销他的人，比如说到盛、Morgan Stanley， 他到香港去推销一个纳斯达克的股票的时候，他可能在香港要有推销的相应的资质。那么在我们数字资产的时候，这些方法都可以借鉴。但是最后把话讲圆满一点的话，就是毕竟数字资产这个技术体系是跟现有的资本市场是不一样的，所以它更高效，速度更快，所以监管要与时俱进，可以更好的促进这个事情。我很喜欢这个标题里面，除了本地化跟全球化之间，还有一个全球本地化这么一个概念。这个之间如果能够融合的话，是起很大作用。
好的，非常感谢亮总。We know Hashkey made a lot of progress in Hong Kong market, and so I have a question to Da Yongzhang, the Chief Commercial Officer of Hashkey. So, for markets that have yet to implement taxes on cryptocurrency, what are your views on expediting a tax policy? Thank you. 中文还是英文
Yeah, it's okay. Both English and Chinese.
Yeah.
So this is about the tax, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we do recognize, yes. So basically, the vision of Hashkey Group is to serve 1 billion users worldwide to provide easy access of the crypto assets services, right? So this is obviously, we can see compliance, which tax is part of that, is one of the main drag in the near future. Because I really like the word from just shared by Mr. Zhong, right? So the whole crypto race is evolving from the chaos to the so-called freedom, right? So from the chaos to freedom, I actually believe rule-based compliance and tax, all those kind of regulations is one of the biggest problems, because when the whole environment is kind of high, people don't really feel safe. Right? People then the mass adoption is not going to happen. Right? So at the end of the day, we can see a lot of new kind of lifestyle is happening, driven by the digital currency, digital kind of people is not going to be locked down by the geography, right? So just like other regulations, I do believe the tax policy really need to evolve according to the new lifestyle of the people, right? So people now can actually you can create values from anywhere in the world. Now you don't need to be stuck in any kind of a small island or any kind of city, right? So when we build the tax policy in the past, we consider about the cost of CK, the living condition of the people there, the income status of people there. But now it needs to be considered more globally, right? So because people got more freedom to move from place to places, right? Yeah. So people have more choices. So then I do suggest that the tax policy need to be a little bit more smart. Otherwise, average people need to be more armed, right? So I think Singapore is a very, very good example. And also, Hong Kong as well, right? So they are a little bit more friendly than people is coming here and also creating more values. Right? Yeah.
Thank you so much. So the next question will be the AML and KYC question. So AML and KYC regulations are critical. So how crypto exchanges improving their AML and KYC processes to meet evolving compliance standards? Maybe start from Hong Yan. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. So, first of all, I would like to say that I'm a believer in the next growth factor for crypto is going to be driven by institutional adoption. And to achieve institutional adoption, the industry needs to evolve to meet the new regulatory standards. And the essence of this, there is KYC and ML policies. And if you look at decentral exchanges, I think the progress is going pretty well. Where over the past 6 months, as the new exchanges are applying for more licenses, especially like in Hong Kong, you have Bybit coming out in March saying that they will be, well, they have already shifted over to offering KYC and ML policies to their clients as mandatory. You have Proofpoint by July, and then even Bitget came out saying that they will be having mandatory KYC checks to their clients by September. So overall, I think we're in a transition period where central exchanges are moving towards full KYC. But the reason why I'm saying it's transition is because still some of these exchanges are offering tiered KYC policies. What that means is they allow users to interact with the platform in a limited capacity with limited, well, partial KYC, like having not to share their address proofs but still being able to trade. Over time, actually, I suppose in a matter of maybe less than a year, I think all this is going to change to full KYC. And the reason is because as these companies seek more licenses, if you think of it from a regulator's point of view, in the traditional minds, there's no such thing as partial KYC. So I believe that soon the overall central exchange environment is going to be leading towards full KYC in a matter of a short period of time. But now, if we look at it from a decentralized point of view, the DEXs are still far away from adopting to KYC rules, and I believe that's because of two main reasons. One, the sector itself, the decentralized nature of the sector itself makes it very difficult to enforce these KYC rules. And then two, it's because the community, there are a majority of users that are trading on this platform, don't prefer to be KYC. But does that mean that the sector will not be performing these KYC over time? I don't believe so. I think as regulators come up with new rules to govern these protocols, I think it's inevitable that changes have to come for these DEXs to adopt to these new rules. And at the same time, I think change is already coming. The evolution is coming where you're seeing new breeds of exchanges such as what you call hybrid exchanges, like what we're building. So at Gravity, we ensure you have a decentralized way of settling your trades by leveraging blockchain technology and allowing self-custodial trading. But at the same time, your trading experience and your onboarding, the regulations, the licensing application, all that is going to be very much similar to a central exchange. So I generally believe that in the coming year, these new type of exchanges, such as hybrids, will be leading the future of the crypto exchanges. So hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, Edward, what's your point of view on this question?
It's a very interesting question coming from a perspective of a DeFi builder, right? And I think the first perspective, as you said, is that initially in DeFi, no one cared about KYC. That was not even something that people considered. With the added difficulty that we're building a technology that's global, permissionless, borderless, anyone can access it anywhere, anytime. And if you're talking about pure decentralized smart contracts that have no upgradability or no admin function, you actually cannot take them down, right? They're always going to be there. They will always be available for anyone to use them. So that creates a massive challenge for regulators across the world because you can have someone that's literally on the other side of the world providing a service to your citizens without any actual enforcement of local laws and regulations. Now, there's different potential solutions to this. This is very classic case where technology advances faster than regulators do. So it's going to be very interesting to see how well regulators adapt to this technology and how technology adapts to the regulators' needs. So I would say, I would like to give one small distinction here that comes from the MiCA, which is the European Union's regulation on virtual asset providers. And this is a little unknown fact, which is MiCA doesn't regulate decentralized smart contracts. And it's on purpose. The reason is because MiCA and the European Union regulators established that it's very different to have a set of smart contracts that are actually controlled by someone versus a set of smart contracts that are immutable and living on the blockchain and that no one can actually, modify them or do anything to them. So they decided to not regulate pure decentralized smart contracts and regulate everyone that actually has control over these tools. So that means that anyone who's building, any tool on blockchain that's sort of hybrid will actually have to fall through the regulation. But any immutable DeFi tools that are going to be living on chain, so far at the moment, they're not going to be regulated. And that's very interesting, right? Which means that they're trying to create some space for innovation to happen while they come up with new solutions. What these solutions could be. I think there is one solution that we probably heard many, many times for many years, back even in 2016 and so on, 2017, back in the day, which was sort of the KYC passport, right? How you can actually leverage zero-knowledge technologies to enable, some form of KYC passport that the user can have in their own wallet. So they don't need to disclose their personal information to any DeFi platform, but DeFi platforms can verify that that user is allowed to use that platform, and that actually conforms to AML and KYC standards. So this sort of holy grail of, ZK-based KYC passport, it's been talked about for many years. Some projects try to do it. Jordi Balina, who's building all the ZK technology of Polygon, was one of the early builders of such identity systems. And we've seen more and more coming out, the last 1 year. So it will be interesting to see, if regulators will be comfortable with the idea of a zero-knowledge-based KYC passport, and what that entails in terms of you having to KYC once, and then being able to use all the applications within an ecosystem freely. So yeah, I think that's one particular idea that we probably will see more of in the near future.
Thank you, Edward. So I think we got a lot of points for the English audience. So maybe 这个哈士奇的张总能不能照顾一下我们这个中文的这个观众们，然后给我们用中文再讲一讲您对于这个问题的理解，谢谢。就是 AML and KYC。
其实现在我们看到整个的这个监管的发展呢，我们看到越来越多的传统的金融的这个 AML KYC 的要求呢，已经在不同的这个国家和不同的这个业务实体上已经开始非常扎实的实施。那作为一个这个受监管的交易所呢，在香港呢，我们其实也在非常积极的实施 KYC 啊、KYT 啊，包括刚才尤总提到的这个全球化的这个财务入啊等等等等。 那在这个里边的话呢，我们其实发现了有几种现象啊，有几个值得关注或者值得探讨的这个点。第一个呢，就是说我们发现其实如果把传统的这个反洗钱、KYC 等等啊这些方法直接的用在今天的这个 crypto 的这个生态系统上呢，会带来非常高的成本啊，会带来非常高的成本。然后呢，甚至在很多地方呢是不太现实。我举一个很简单的例子啊，今天我们知道在大部分国家，我们的投资者归分两类，一类叫做这个 retail consumer， 就是这个 massive 就是大众投资者，另外一部分呢我们被称为合格投资者或者专业投资者。那它一个很重要的一个区分就是合格投资者呢，我们认为他有能力更好的管理自己的资产，管理自己的风险。那它的区别认证的区别就在于除了 KYC 反洗钱等这些以外呢，那合格投资者他要求有一定数量的这个金融资产。就是说它有一定投资能力的金融资产。那在香港呢，这个是800万港币啊，在新加坡，如果我没记错，可能是50万新币啊。但这个资产的认定据我所知，在全世界大部分国家 ，crypto 的资产是不在这个认定范围内的。反而这个其实就是一个很简单的一个例子，是今天的规则没有办法去适应这个 crypto 的发展，因为实际上持有大量 crypto 资产的人，反而是最有能力管理在这个领域的投资风险最有能力去制定这个领域的投资策略的人，那他们反而该讲在这个更多的这个交易方法之外，这是我觉得一个观点。然后另外一个观点呢，也确实我看到一些非常多的积极的因素，就今天实际上。不管是 blockchain 这种分布式完全可审计，然后透明可追踪，或者是我们整个 DID 的这种全球可追踪的这样的一个体系，实际上是给反洗钱和 KYC 带来了更好的技术手段这个其实是可以让反洗钱和 KYC 等等所有的金融其实可以做得更加有效率。然后第三点的话，就是说我们也可喜的看到，实际上监管呢也认识到了这一点，整个链上反洗钱今天已经被刚刚在几个月之前发布的香港更新的反洗钱规则上，已经认同我们链上反洗钱这些工具可以成为我们反洗钱的一个重要的依据，也认同我们去做这个钱包的时候的认证等等各个方面可以作为我们去做这个实控认证的手段所以我们看到还是有非常多的这个可喜的手段的。我觉得作为一个从业者呢，其实我们希望我们可以跟监管、跟这个业内的各种合作关一起我们能够建设越来越多的更加高效更加务实的这样的一个全球化的这样的一个反洗钱和KYC的手段，从为消费者、为整个行业建立信心的同时呢，也给监管更大的更多的能力、更多的信心让促进这个行业更好的发展。对的。
明白您这样子。So we know, besides the government's regulation, we also have self-regulation. So there is a question to Edward. So, what role does self-regulation play, and can it be effective in ensuring the compliance? Thank you.
It's probably the hardest question, right? How do you self-regulate DeFi?
Yes.
Anonymous builders everywhere in the world. Very hard to self-regulate. I do think there's some, let's say, low-hanging fruit that we could approach as an ecosystem. For example, we haven't seen any sort of consortium of auditors, right? That could actually build a protocol that enables anyone to verify if a set of smart contracts are audited, and by how many auditors, right? And potentially have access to those reports on chain. So we haven't seen such verifications or protocols that approach, these use cases. So right now, when you go and try and interact with a smart contract, you don't know if they're audited or not. So you don't have a sense of security as a user, and you cannot actually pre-alert the user if you're building a wallet or a tool that there might be some dangers around that particular smart contract. So finding some decentralized way to actually aggregate these audits and actually verify that, okay, if this smart contract actually passed some checks by a third party, and actually, be somewhat safer than, just any unchecked smart contract. That's probably one of the ways to go forward. But it's going to be very difficult to basically coordinate everyone in DeFi, considering they're global, they're everywhere, they're anonymous. So obviously self-regulation will be a difficult part. But if it comes down from the ecosystem level, the L1s through which you are building on, I think that will be a big change as well, right? So if you're building on Polygon promoting some self-regulation. If you're building on Tron promoting some self-regulation. So I think that will be important, that it's the ecosystem that actually try to get the builders to conform to some common standards as well.
Thank you so much. So the last question will be institution players about how can compliance policy curb insider trading and from running. So first I will ask thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so insider trading, the rules around those things have been around since like 1934 with Securities Exchange Act, and you have other rules like Dodd-Frank. And we all know that these things need to be governed and regulated, but within the crypto space, you do we have a perception that there's a lot of insider trading within the space. And I think the reason is because of two things. One, it's primarily because regulators have tough time actually regulating these because of the constraints on resources that they have. And then two, it's primarily because a lot of the crypto companies still lack these compliance policies internally to curb these actions. And then where do we start? It's quite easy because we just need to reference some of the rules that these maybe investment banks or institutions, the TradFi will have already in place within their companies. And we can take a few steps where, first of all, the compliance should actively educate and train the employees on understanding why these insider trading and front running is bad. And if I recall my experience back in as I was working at Goldman Sachs as a trader, I mean, you had these kind of trainings on a quarterly basis to ensure that employees are 100% aware that these things need to be heard. Now, the second is that the firm needs to have strict information barriers between different teams. For example, if you're working at the listing side, then you should not be talking about your listing activities with other peers. So these things to be set. And then the third would be ensuring that employees have registered their trading accounts with the companies to help with the better monitoring. And next would be ensuring that we have trading restrictions. So people who are with sensitive information may have to go through some blackout periods where you won't be able to trade. And then you also need clearance where you need to seek approval before you trade. So, and most importantly after this, I think the most important thing is that you need to have monitoring tools and consequences. So consequences meaning where if you do not abide to these things, then the company should be making sure that employees are called out. So I think through all these processes, we should be able to curb these insider trading. And I personally believe that having controls like this in each of these companies is essential to bringing back the integrity of the overall industry and to bring a more level playing field to protect the customers or investors into the space, which will eventually lead to a better adoption as a crypto in general.
Thank you so much. Because the time limited, so 方瑞老板，您能简单的再给我们用一句话总结一下您对这个问题的理解吗？对，因为我们时间已经到了，谢谢您。
Be very short。那个，我其实很同意刚才洪毅讲的一句话，就是 tools 加 consequence。DeFi 是提供了其实一个很好的 tool， 让有些人可以做坏事，但其实也是加强监管。因为真正的 DeFi 你很多东西都是透明的，而且数据是不可篡改，干过什么都在上面。所以这个呢，其实从监管的角度和市场角度很容易看到这些数据。所以从工具角度来讲 ，DeFi 不是让事情变得更复杂，在一定程度上让事情变得更透明。但同时，光靠技术是解决不了问题的，因为就像生活中有些人会冲动的会干些傻事，但是绝大多数人还是就算冲动了也不干傻事，为什么呢？他知道他干了这个傻事，就比如去打人家一拳呐，拍人家砖呐，他会有后果。这个后果就是法律， 法律就是 regulation， 所以很多人知道这件事情，技术就算可以作恶，他也只是拿菜刀来切菜，不用是菜刀去砍人。所以应该讲技术和那个所谓 consequence 是由所谓的合规跟法律法规来确定，两者结合起来，我觉得 DeFi 就是一个更快的一个工具，更好的一把菜刀，但是还是应该该切它该切的东西。所以我是在弘毅的上面就加这个一个小小的一个观点。
好的，非常感谢。Thank you all. And this is for today's complaints and regulations panel. Thank you so much. And Angela from ExchangesChallenges. Thank you.